What's worse than a Google Ads account that's performing badly? One that looks like it's actually performing well. Because when everything in the dashboard is green and you're seeing increases with all of your numbers, you think everything is working well, so then you stop looking for problems. And that's exactly what happened with one of my podiatry clients, until we dug beneath the platform's numbers and found that the real reason behind why the business wasn't growing or they weren't seeing a return on their ad spend was because of what was happening off platform. And fixing it didn't require a higher budget, it required better data. So coming up in this video, I'll show you how we uncovered the hidden problems that was wasting this client's budget, why Google was actually optimizing for the wrong people even though the account looked healthy, and the exact changes that I made that tripled their booked consultations without changing their ad spend. So the very first thing that I did was I ran an audit on the account. And honestly, at first glance, there didn't seem to be much wrong with this account when looking at the data. Their conversion rate looked really healthy. It was generating around 15 to 20 leads every month, and nothing inside of the campaign was flashing red. If you were only looking at the dashboard though, you'd probably think that the account was doing exactly what it was supposed to be doing and that you were actually killing it. But dashboards only tell you what they're configured to measure. So instead of stopping there, we compared every lead that came from Google Ads against what was actually happening inside of the business. And that's when we discovered what was actually happening. So we found that roughly half of the leads that Google was reporting weren't actually new patients at all. Some were existing patients trying to book another appointment, and others were people looking for completely different clinics who had clicked on their ad by mistake. So while Google Ads proudly showed that 15 to 20 conversions every month, the reality was that only 1 or 2 of those people were actually becoming a booked consultation. So the business wasn't paying for new customers, it was paying for their repeat clients and paying for bad leads. And that's a really important distinction because activity in an account and calls and clicks does not grow a business. New customers do. So this client came to us wanting to see about 10 new consults a month and were wondering what they needed to do to get there in terms of increasing their budget. So that's what triggered the audit, and I'm glad it did, because if they had just increased their budget, Google would have just gone and found more people that were bad leads. They would have found more people that were already searching for them and more people looking for other clinics. So first we optimized the account and we clean up the lead quality, then we can start to think about scaling it up and increasing spend. So once we understood the real problem, the goal wasn't just to get more leads. The goal was to teach Google what a good lead actually looked like so it could then go find more of those good leads. And so the first thing that we did is we closed the feedback loop with all of the conversions. So every time someone clicks on an ad, Google generates something called a G-CLID or a Google Click ID. Think of it kind of like a tracking number that follows that visitor all the way through the sales process or the booking process. So instead of only telling Google that someone filled out a form, we started telling them exactly what happened after that form was filled out. So did they become a qualified lead? Did they actually book an appointment? And how much money did they spend? So that one change completely transformed the quality of data that Google was learning from. So instead of chasing people who were likely to submit a form, it could now start identifying people who were actually likely to become new patients. At the same time, we cleaned up the conversion goals inside of the account. So there were several low value actions being counted as primary conversions. And that's important because Google only optimizes towards primary conversion goals. So the algorithm was literally being rewarded for shallow actions that had very little connection to booked appointments or revenue. And so these were click actions, mainly phone call clicks that didn't actually turn into real phone calls. So we changed those to secondary. So they were still being tracked for reporting purposes, but they were no longer influencing Google's bidding decisions within the campaign. So now with those 2 changes, the account had a much clearer definition of what a successful conversion is. But there was another problem. So even with better conversion data, the account structure itself was making it really difficult for Google's algorithm to learn. So they were running one campaign with about 7 different ad groups in it. And so the budget was being spread across too many different ad groups and each collecting only a handful of conversions every month. So Google's smart bidding strategies work best when it has enough conversion data to start to recognize patterns. When every ad group is starved of data, it becomes much harder for the algorithm to make confident bidding decisions. So we consolidated the campaign structure and narrowed it down to just 2 ad groups. So that pooled the conversion data together and gave Google's machine learning much stronger signals to work with. So the next thing we did was we went through the campaign settings. There are a handful of default Google Ads settings that sound harmless, but for a lot of local service businesses, they can quietly waste a surprising amount of your budget. And this is something that I see a lot when I'm auditing an account. So the first was the location targeting. So by default, Google often uses a setting called presence or interest. And so that means that your ads don't just show to people who are physically in your service area. They can also show to people who have simply shown an interest in that location. So for a local podiatrist, that's a problem because someone planning a vacation or researching the area or living hundreds of miles away isn't going to book an appointment. So we switched the account to presence only, making sure that every advertising dollar was going towards people who lived in that area or who were regularly spending time in that area. Next, we turned off the search partners. Now, search partners can work for some businesses, but in this account, it was sending budget to lower quality traffic outside of Google's main search results. And when your priority is lead quality, not just lead volume, the extra noise usually isn't worth paying for. So for this client, we wanted every single dollar focused on people actively searching for a podiatrist on Google search. So we turned it off. We also turned off the display network. And then finally, we tightened up the keywords and started testing different ad copy. So better keywords attract people with stronger buying intent. We also went through and evaluated if the keywords were spending a lot of money or not bringing in leads. And then with the ad copy, better ads filter out the wrong clicks before they ever cost you money. So we started testing different headlines and different descriptions. And the results showed almost immediately. Our click-through rate jumped from 4.6% to over 9%. Almost doubling. And that's important because higher click-through rate doesn't just mean more people are clicking. It tells Google that your ads are more relevant to the searches. And when Google sees your ads as more relevant, your quality score starts to improve, your ad rank improves, and you can often achieve better positions without even increasing your bids. So then everything starts to work together. You get cleaner data, you get smarter bidding, less wasted spend, better traffic. And once all of those pieces were working toward the same goal, the results in their account started to look very different. So here is the main nitty-gritty of the results and what we saw. If we were only looking at lead volume, you'd actually think the account got worse. So before the changes, the account was generating around 15 to 20 leads every month. After the changes, that number dropped to around 8 to 10. And that's kind of what we wanted anyways. So if you remember, around half of those original leads weren't actually new patients. They were existing patients or people looking for a competitor or simply low quality inquiries that were never going to turn into revenue. So we didn't lose the good leads, we stopped paying for those bad ones. But what we did see was that their booked consultations increased from roughly 1 to 2 per month to about 5 to 6 per month over a 2-month span. So that's around a 3x increase using exactly the same advertising budget. We did not touch their budget. So the lead to booking rate tells the story of this account even better. So before, only about 8% of the leads became a booked consultation. After the changes, that jumped to around 60%. So the business was getting fewer phone calls, but dramatically more new patients. And that's the difference between optimizing for activity and optimizing for outcomes. And it wasn't just bookings that improved. We also saw the click-through rate almost double, going from 4.6% to just over 9%. The impression share also increased from 35% to just under 50%. And the top of page rate also improved. And again, this was just over the span of the last 2 months. So the account wasn't just bringing in better quality leads, it was becoming more competitive in the auctions that it was entering. And that's really the lesson from the entire case study. It's not about finding some secret Google Ads hack. It wasn't about spending more money, and it wasn't about making dozens of complicated changes. It was about making sure that the account was optimized for what actually mattered to the business, which was new patients. Because Google Ads is incredibly good at hitting the target that you give it, as long as you are giving it the right target. And the truth is, this podiatrist account looked healthy right at the beginning too. We only found these problems because we dug beneath the dashboard. So if you're spending money on Google Ads and you're not completely sure where it's going, I do offer free Google Ads audit. So I'll personally review your account, show you where you're wasting budget, and explain exactly what I'd fix to generate more qualified leads. So if that sounds useful, you'll find the link in the description below.